Welcome, everyone, to our event, Seeing Opportunities in Devastation, sharing stories to inspire. A special welcome to co host Ed and our guru mentor, who last week took us through the topic around how to identify the source of your business. But he started it out with the challenging question: what is the source of your business? Do you even know? And so we went through a couple of those things. So as soon as you could go listen to the playback on Clubhouse itself, but we'll be publishing these very soon in the next week or so. And you'll find it on Griffin Enterprise Development as our YouTube channel. So Ed, without further ado, I know you said last week, and I'm not too sure. Maybe I shouldn't even mention what we're in for today. I think I'll leave that up to you. So anyway, Ed, yeah, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jacques. Yeah, we talked about source of business. And do you know where your business is coming from and why it's coming to you? Um, and the fault of that often starts a lot earlier. It starts before you even make a sale. And I had the most incredibly interesting example today, interesting from a different perspective. Some days ago, I've had a series of emails from someone who is trying to sell something which was wildly inappropriate to my business. And so I ignored them. And then I got an email that sort of suggested, well, you haven't responded. Did you forget or something like that? And I just thought to myself, um, you were sending this to me and you are making the suggestion that I owe you a response and that my non response was accidental. So I sent an email pointing out these facts to the gentleman and suggesting that before he starts his email campaign, it would probably be worthwhile him checking his target audience against his database list. He's clearly bought a database list, and it's not POPI compliant because I haven't given permission for any widespread emails, certainly not from this company. So he's sending non-POPI compliant mails to businesses selling quite a big ticket item, um, and hoping for a response. And clearly, if I'm any example, to wildly inappropriate businesses, where he's simply sending them because he bought them on an email platform, on email database that someone sold him. Now, you know, if you want to establish your source of business, is this a great way to start? Or is this really, really a silly thing to do? And in my opinion, this is just foolish. First of all, you run the risk not only of not getting a prospect, but of irritating someone who is not in your target market, but may have a public platform like this one. Now, I'm not going to mention the names of this company, of course, but if they are listening into this podcast, then I'd strongly suggest to them that they do their homework first. If you want to know what the source of your business is, start by defining what the source of your business you would like to be. So, would you like your source of business to be all new business or primarily new business? And if that is your goal, from what kind of target markets? Then you can narrow down your marketing, spend much more time on researching each target within the market, and get a much higher rate of return for your efforts. Instead of this shotgun approach where you just mail everybody from the corner flower seller to the biggest mining concern with some kind of marketing promotion. That to me is just wasteful and makes you look foolish. And I would hesitate to deal with a company that I feel has made themselves look like fools. So I have a little rant about that one. And I certainly expressed my views to the gentleman. I haven't had a response back again, unsurprisingly. But be very, very careful. Your source of business matters. And if you're trying a shotgun approach, you only do that ever because you don't know who your target market is. So you put it out there to the general world and see what kind of response you get from different sectors. And then once you get that response from different sectors, then you hone in on those sectors and market really well to them. There is no other justification for doing these 10,000 email blanket shots to everyone who you've got a name for. Aside from anything else, you can get yourself quite uh, uh, easily listed as a spammer. And you are not poppy compliant. If anyone chooses to raise a complaint, they could. Not smart marketing at all. So, going back to source of business, then um, we are honing in on what we want from our source of business. If we want most of our business to come off the customer base, what sort of business is coming off the customer base? Is it for new things that they haven't ordered before? In other words, we're expanding horizontally into that customer. Is it for more of the same things that that they've always ordered, in which case we're expanding vertically into that customer? Or is it for things that are associated with the product that they've always bought before, but which themselves they haven't bought before? So, for instance, maintenance services or insurance or any other product which is associated with the main product that you sell. In which case, you've probably had a very, very effective customer marketing campaign selling that ancillary product. That's smart marketing. If you want new business, where do you want that business to come from? What sort of products do you want them to sell to you, um, to buy from you? Sorry, um, where is that goose that lays the golden eggs for you? And then, if you can't measure it, then if you can't monitor it and measure it, you can't manage it. So then, measure everything. Check that everything is working for you, see what works and what doesn't work, and then build your business from then onwards. So that you get a targeted and focused business that goes in after the people that it really wants to go in and is successful in that field. Okay, so that's just a bit of recap of last week. The the one thing that I wanted to talk about today didn't in fact happen in a sales or marketing um, conversation at all. It happened during a coaching session or mentoring session um, that I held recently. And the person I was talking to was grappling with a thorny strategic question. And the question was basically, was he right on choosing the course that he had chosen, the sort of strategic manner in which he had chosen to do business over decades? Was that right for him, or should he have changed? Should he have perhaps become more money orientated and chased the money as his first target? Should he, on the other hand, chase simply good returns, good results from what he did, out of what he did, because that would give him the satisfaction of a job well done? And he was dithering around among these uh, alternatives. And he asked what I thought he should do. And this was driven by a short term need. Um, and I didn't know what the driver behind it. So we started probing a little bit into this background, where as the conversation developed, so it became clear that we were trying to answer the wrong question. The wrong question was, should I change my way of doing things? That was totally the wrong question. The right question was, what do I do about the short term issue that I need to address? And does that mean that at least for a certain time, I need to change my way of doing things? That's a very, very different question entirely. And as we probed down, it became clear that that was the right question. Would he have to do something different in the short term to alleviate, to solve the problem that he's facing? Or could he carry on with his life as before? Or should he change altogether to a different area? And after quite a lot of things, we managed to get to some reasonable semblance of answers in that. Myself and this colleague, his question was, should he change his way of life, his whole being, um, in order to meet a particular need at that time? Was he wrong in doing what he'd been doing for many, many years? And just to put a little content onto that, the paths that he was looking at, the one side was pure money motivation. Um, go after the money, irrespective. The other path was going after satisfaction, um, doing what this colleague felt was the right thing, which gave him joy to do. And they were probably mutually exclusive. If you simply took every opportunity to make money, you would probably not be able to take the things that gave you joy. And if you took the things that gave you joy, they would not, in all probability, be the highest paying ones in the world. Now, this is a fundamental question. And so we were examining this as a strategic question. And I was a bit concerned with whether we had the right question. So we started probing a little bit deeper down. And what it turned out was that that wasn't the right question. The right question was, what do I do about this need in the short term for a capital injection? How would I address that issue? And that's a very, very different question. So we drilled down into that question, and we looked at what the duration and what the need was for the amount of capital that was needed over that period, and we could now break it down into its component chunks. And then once we broke it down into component chunks, we could say, okay, what are the possible sources of that capital injection in this period? And what would you have to sacrifice in this period to access those capital sources? Because there would be some sacrifices. And we broke it quite down, and we looked at the feasibility of doing of accessing that capital through the sources we'd identified. And we did find gaps, and we said we're going to have to be a little bit more creative in accessing this capital. But what we did say was that for a period, it was probably right to put on hold those things that gave joy, because you had an immediate need. Now, that whole conversation I found to be very interesting, and it made me reflect on an old document that has been around for a long, long time, called the Rules of Life, Rules of Living. And one of the parts of the Rules of Living is that whether you like it or not, you're enrolled full time in the University of Life. You have no choice in this matter. And the University of Life is continually going to send you lessons. And you can only move on to the next lesson once you've learned the lesson that it's presented you with. And if you don't learn it immediately, it will continually send the same lesson in different guises, in different formats, until you have learned the lesson. And if you don't learn the lesson, then you're going to get stuck in that place, maybe for a very long time. And if we think back in our society of the very many people that are totally stuck at one point where they haven't learned the lesson, where they're stuck in hatred or despair or grief or desire for revenge, and they can think of nothing other than that particular issue, and it consumes them entirely. And despite however many lessons are sent to them, they don't learn them. They've stuck in one place. And it then says once you've learned the lesson, you can move on to the next lesson, and the next, and the next. It also says the lessons are unending. They will continue to be shown to you throughout your life. And at any point, you can get stuck at a point, or you can learn the lessons. And I'm very, very aware that I learn lessons all the time. And this was one of the most valuable lessons I learned. And the lesson that I took from that coaching discussion was answers are not that hard to find. Questions, however, are very, very hard to find in many instances. And that made me reflect on how we've been talking for years about needs based selling. In fact, the book Solution Selling was published 30 years ago in 1993. It's been around for decades, and we still haven't got it right, have we? We talk needs based selling, but then we go out and we say, what do you need? And someone says, well, I need a computer. And they say, okay, we've got this very nice computer for you. What's your budget? Yeah, well, we can nearly fit into that budget if we sacrifice this and this and this. Are you addressing a need? Really? Have you asked the question, what do you need? Have you asked the right question? And maybe the right question is another lesson that I learned some time ago from the uh, advertising or the creative agency group called Creative Council. Massively successful. Went from zero to being sold at an estimated 5 billion in less than 10 years, with the owners still keeping their roles as running the show. It was quite a magnificent performance. They also won the Entrepreneur of the Year in the early stages. But they said that their formula for understanding what was happening was drawn from a 4-year old. How a 4-year old will interrogate the world. And that is the why kind of thing. And if you have children, you'll be familiar with this, because the son looks up at the sky and says, Dad, why is the sky blue? And Dad, depending on you know, whether he wants to actually inform the scientific answer or just get rid of the question, might say anything from, well, it's actually just a reflection of all the seas around us, or he might say because God made it so, or he might give some other answer. And what do you think's going to happen? Is the little boy going to be satisfied with that? No. He is going to say, why? Why did God make it blue? And so you will keep going on with the why questions. Why, why, why? At each answer you get, you interrogate the answer until you get down to the basis where there are no more why questions. And they used to use this as their method of understanding what any task that they had to understand. They continually asked why, why, why. It was quite frustrating if you ever tried to present something to them, because they would say, why? And you would give a very logic explanation, and they would say, why? And you would now drive down in your explanation, drill down in your explanation, and they would say, why? And you would go further and deeper, and by then you would be starting to sweat, and you would probably get down to levels that you had never thought of yourself. It was a very, very clever concept. So, one of the ways where we can actually do needs based selling is to use that 4-year-old approach. So, when someone says, I need a computer, you say, why? And he says, well, my previous computer broke down. Why? Well, it was very old. What did you do on it? Why do you do that? Now, you might drive people mad. You have to do this very delicately if you're in a sales situation. But it does allow you to get to really needs if you can do it with as opposed to the prospective buyer. Then it gets down to the nitty gritty of the need. And you're going to end up supplying that prospective buyer with a much, much better computer and software and peripheral set than you would have if you didn't have that knowledge. You will be able to share your knowledge to fit his needs very, very much better, and you will be practicing true solution selling. So, the lesson that I take out of that, and it applies to marketing campaigns, and it applies to sales, and it certainly applies to strategy, is to say the answers aren't that difficult. It is the questions which really test us. And you need to interrogate those questions until you get the right question. And one of the ways of doing it, only one of the ways of doing it, is to say why, why, why. But there are others. But focus on your questions. Leave the answers. Answers are easy. Questions are difficult.
You know what kind of comes to mind, Ed, is, we believe one or two things. It's either curiosity kills the cat or curiosity feeds the cat. And I'm just, in terms of asking the right questions, it's got to be driven by having this curiosity, really wanting to get behind what a perceived need is to a real need. And you're quite right. I mean, in your example, in the salesman's example, if somebody says, I want a computer, but you don't know why the person wants a computer. And it could be, and in the end, it might be that the person does not need a computer. I'm just quoting that
Hmm.
as an example.
Now, there are many
That
instances of exactly that, where
mm,
they could do with a tablet or a phone
correct,
exactly what they want to do on a computer, where it would
correct.
be less expensive, or maybe the computer isn't the answer at all. What they need is an internet connection, and a big
Yes,
screen phone or something like that.
yes,
Unless you know, and then it fails even further because you then ask, "What's your budget?" And the prospective client tells you the budget. Now you fit a computer into the budget, computer which you don't know why he needs into a budget which you don't know why is established.
yes.
Really smart selling.
But don't you think, what counteracts the curiosity that's required to ask this why? Because you don't necessarily just want to do it mechanically,
No.
but it's examining your. I think that's probably the other thing. Examining your motives. Oh, I got to make my target sell. So
Mm,
irrespective of what the client actually needs, I'm going to sell him something so that my sales targets are met.
mm, yeah. It's all a question of, are you satisfying your needs or your customers' needs? And there's a golden rule of selling which says, if you satisfy the customer needs, then you make a lot of sales and your needs will go away. If you satisfy your needs, you've got quite a high risk of the customer going away.
Ah,
Be
that's
very
that's
careful
that's so
about
cool.
thinking of quotas when you or in a sales situation. It is a very, very dangerous thought. That's about the sort of equivalent of the thought of a cat that looks at a busy main road and says, I wonder what's on the other side of that. Very dangerous question. You might just be proving the old adage right.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to cater for all kinds of mindsets. But Ed, I think, on sort of on that note, I think landing it on uh, finding the answers and saying that you can find an answer, which, it's very true. Finding answers are easy, but making the effort and having the curiosity to ask the right questions. And I guess patience,
Mm. Yeah.
because you are driven to meet a client need so that your own needs go away rather than focusing on your needs and having the risk that the client goes away. I like that. Excellent, Ed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jacques.
And for those of you who are going to be listening to this podcast, we want to really wish you a very blessed and Merry Christmas festive season. And we trust that 2023, more than just better than 2022, will be the best one yet. And Ed, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us throughout the year. It's been an amazing journey, and long shall it continue. And thank you to, and a shout out to Julia and Melissa for being faithful and supporting us while we running this live event. Thank you, and also all the very, very best to both of you as well. So, without further ado, Ed, as we sign off for this year, look forward to starting up with you again in the new year.
We'll see you in 2023, and in the meanwhile, it isn't Christmas yet. Go sell something.
Keep on point. And all right, that's great. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.